All right. Good morning and welcome on this lovely, warm August day as we start with our very first parent boot camp. This is going to be a more in-depth dive to what I covered in that orientation training. We're going to spend a lot more time investigating summit learning, playing with that vocabulary, and helping you parents begin to feel more comfortable. And then in future trainings, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the projects and into those power focus areas to help you feel more confident in supporting your student, especially on those Mondays and Fridays at home with you. I'm going to start briefly with the school pathways. Just remember that if you're having some tech trouble and you have younger students, the high school is classical HS. So if your login for the elementary district is not working for the high school district, it's because you're not on the high school district part. In pathways, that's where your parent initials go. And that's where you and your student are going to ensure that they are tracking those minutes for PE. Remember, it's minutes, not hours, and it's minutes with the activity. So walking 45 minutes, dance class 180 minutes, and be sure you're giving your students credit for what they're doing on those weekends. We can't track them on the weekend, but we certainly want to give them credit for what they are completing. This is also where you will find your students' unofficial transcript, as well as their course schedule. If you have put in a schedule change, either an add or a drop, you can be logging into Pathways daily, and that's where that schedule change will be reflected in their classes. Once it's reflected in Pathways, then that will sync over to Summit and to Schoology. So it starts with Pathways, and then the syncs usually happen after school, late evening, early morning, in the overnight hours. And so the changes are reflected the next school day. Okay. When we're going to jump over and spend a little bit of time here in Schoology. So I am currently logged in my mom mode, and you'll notice I can see my son's platform. When I first log in as myself, I have the option using that down caret to toggle between the two. As a parent, I am logged in and I see that PL Parents page. If you have not joined that group, I'm going to jump over here really quickly and show you what it looks like. We receive all of the updates. We have a list of parents. And if you have not added that, oh, I don't have the code available. Please reach out at the end of this and I will share the code with you. We have a large number of moderators here. And what I love is a place for us to support each other where we don't have to go out to social media. I also belong to the counseling team page, and that's where our counselors can post updates. If I look at courses, as a parent, I don't have many courses, and that's really okay. But as a parent, I have access to the school's calendar. This is a great tech tip that when I am logged in here as a parent and I go to my calendar page, I can see the school's updates as well as any postings for that PL parent group. There's not much apparently showing up here for August, but we can look ahead in September. Now, I am not seeing that the high school has posted a whole bunch of our due dates. So typically leadership begins posting big events like the luau that's coming up this Friday. So we want to be sure that when we subscribe to the calendar, we want to subscribe to the evolutionary version, not the static version, the one that will become live. And so we're going to go to export. And then in export, we have two options. The first one is the download. And we're going to download it once. That's the one and done. But what we really want to do is share this calendar to our regular calendaring software. So Outlook, Google Calendar, any of those extra pieces. And you would use this link right here. So copy and paste into your regular iCal software. And then as the changes are made here in Schoology, they will be reflected in your personal calendar. That has saved my bacon more than once with events, activities, dress-up days, and those types of things that my student is not necessarily super skilled at managing, but that would want to participate if given the opportunity. So as the mom, I get to come in with the save. But the best piece we're going to look at right now is that drop-down carrot, and we're going to look at it like our student. This is how you are going to start off those Monday home office hours in support of your student. Many of them woke up today going, it's a school day, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And this is where that project management skill building begins. And it begins at home with you. So jumping back and forth between the messaging they are receiving in Schoology and the actions they are going to be completing in Summit is where we're going to be focusing our time today and learning how to do that. And then you'll be able to support your student at home on Mondays. Remembering that Schoology is our communication tool. It functions like the classroom. There are some assignments that are showing up here in our to-dos. Most all of the assignments that are to do in Schoology are the paperwork side of things. So in the PL 101 class, they were supposed to sign and submit the syllabus. That's a paperwork piece. And as the course teacher, I was encouraging students to figure out how you could submit a piece of paper into a digital learning environment. So did you take a screenshot and attach digital signatures and then submit it? Totally fine. Did you print it out, manually sign it, take a picture and upload it? That's an awesome strategy too. There were not a series of step-by-step instructions because every student's interface is slightly different. This is not punitive if they did not get it submitted by last Friday at midnight. This is a chance for us to troubleshoot it together if they're struggling, so we can help ensure they understand that with their computer, they understand a pathway of submitting assignments. Another paperwork assignment that happens in Schoology are the work samples. Again, these are not typically graded assignments. This is we have to collect work samples from students for every course they are enrolled in. If we don't have a work sample, we cannot give them a grade and they cannot earn credits on their transcript. It's a legal requirement for our independent study model. So again, what you're seeing as the tasks in Schoology are not gradable assignments, although quite honestly, we have to assign a point value to them. Their true grades will be calculated in Summit, and we'll go over that in just a little bit. So if they were confused over what they were supposed to work on, they are not alone. Thank you for showing up and partnering with us so that you can help explain it. If your students have workshops, the teachers will be explaining it to them in person in their workshops starting tomorrow. If it's a virtual class, we will attempt to clarify in videos and in course updates, but your showing up today is a true benefit to your student to help explain and clarify as well. I'm talking about course updates. So what does that actually look like? Well, in each course, so notice I'm looking at it like my student. In each course, there's an opportunity for an update to be posted. So if we go and look at Mr. Sonoda's English 4 class, we land here on the materials page. There's a welcome to English update. We have an how to take an English content assessment. We have a work samples document. We also have some additional resources for that very first project and an extra little link here that I'm sure will be explained somewhere. We also see that the work sample assignment is due 8:30. And again, that would be a paperwork piece that goes along with the regular course curriculum. As the mom, if I open up the work samples, I get the explanation of it, but I don't have the opportunity to see the assignment or to submit it. Because as the mom, I'm not supposed to do it. That falls to my student. But as the mom on Monday morning, I can say, hey man, how's your work sample coming? And if he's my elbow buddy, he can show me on his computer that he's actually completed it. When I go back to our English 4 class, I can look here at updates and I can see if Mr. Sonoda has posted something, which he has not yet. Quite honestly, this first week of school, this week number 1, we're a little frazzled. I am my son's econ teacher, and I have completed all of my course updates this morning, except that one. So now I can't even show you what econ looks like because I didn't do it yet. But I will tell you that the updates will show up in that next line down. I will tell you that if you are following along on your screen and you look at your students' courses, then if he or she is enrolled in the PL 101 class, that class has an update, because I did make a point of making sure that those students received that information. So I have the opportunity as the course teacher to post the update, and you have the opportunity as a parent to view as your student and find that information. So while Mr. Sonoda has not necessarily posted an update today, I also happen to know that there is here our Welcome to English update. And somewhere in here, he's got a course workflow document. I'm going to guess it's right here in our Critical Lenses resources, because that's the name of the first project. If I open that folder, I have a whole bunch of different documents in here. Oh, I see something called workflow. That may not be intuitive to your student. It could be an assignment calendar. There could be different names by different teachers, but for the most part, there's going to be something in there. I would encourage you today to sit with your student and have them jump around through all of those courses and open the links and see where they take them. You can't break Schoology. And if you do, send me a message and we'll fix it. But really and truly on the consumer side, you can't break Schoology. When I open this Critical Lens workflow, oh my goodness, here we go. Now I get to know what is due when. And so I'm looking, oh, there's a color code here. Critical Lenses PFA. That's the power focus area that we're going to look at in Summit in just a minute. Checkpoint 1. That is also in Summit. PFA characterization. That would be a power focus area. Checkpoint 2. And we have some teacher notes provided here. So power focus areas are the nuggets of knowledge, those modules of learning. The students practice their self-direction. They learn this independently, but they're not learning it in a vacuum. And Mr. Sonoda is going to be providing support from 9 to 10 on the 1st. So any student who is working on this week independently and needs some additional support should mark their calendar that Mr. Sonoda is going to be providing support from 9 to 10 on the 1st. So using this as our framework, let's jump over into Summit Learning and see what that means for the student. I'm going to pop in over here. Now it's summitlearning.org. As a best practices, I actually have a window set up for student support, and it has these 3 websites: Schoology, Summit, and Pathways. And so I open that window when I need to buddy up with my son. Typically, that is Mondays and Fridays. Mondays, we set his agenda for the week. We identify what's due when, and some of those key activities or agenda items he needs to do in order to meet those goals. Then on Friday, on our home day, we follow up together. I typically give him until after office hours to double check and see if he was able to meet those goals or if it's going to impact our weekend. The login button is the same for students logging in on their personal devices or for parents. If they're logging in with their Chromebooks, it should default. It's going to have them log into Google, their G Suite with their TCA Docs credentials, and then they log in with Google. I'll say that again. For students, they log in to Google, and then they log in with Google. For parents, we click on this orange login button, and we do parent login. So the students log in with Google, the parents log in using the login as a parent. You should have received an email from Summit Learning with a convoluted code that will link your student to your email and allow you to view it as a parent. If you have not received that email yet, please lurk at the end of this presentation, and I will endeavor to get you set up today before we finish our meeting. I'll stop the recording at that point. Okay. When you first log in using that parent login, you have the opportunity to either go to your child's dashboard or explore the parent guide. I would encourage you at some point to spend some time tinkering around with that parent guide. It's created for the parent lens to help coach you through some of the vocabulary, that lexicon of learning that the Summit platform utilizes. You also have the opportunity to change your password from the super convoluted one that they provided to you and view your account information. If you have more than one student with us in Summit, we have the opportunity to link them both together, and you would have both blue boxes for both of your students. For today's purposes, we're going to go and view the dashboard. Notice now that my menu changes, my blue bar menu changes, and it shows here that I am viewing as my son. The view as is very important. It means I did not hijack his account and log in as him. This is especially important if your kiddo is not sitting next to you, is not your elbow buddy. Because if they are on campus working and you log in like you are them, you will bump them out of the software. It's designed to maintain academic integrity and that only one person can be logged into that account at a time. So if they are taking an assessment, you will bump them out. If they are working with their teacher, you will bump them out. So please be sure that you are always logging in using that parent login in the upper right-hand corner and your email address, not your student's login with Google. I really can't emphasize that enough. In our blue bar, we have our announcements. This is where teachers can push information to the students. Now, my son was enrolled here last year, so 15 weeks ago, we were wrapping up the school year. All of the new posts will show up at the top. So you can always look back in time if your feed gets really full. If it says new, it'll have it underneath that date and time, and it means your child has not seen it yet. Under announcements in our blue menu bar is the week view. Please note, if there's nothing in here, it's because your student has not put anything in there yet. This does not self-populate. So what I would recommend as part of your Monday office hours is looking back and forth between that workflow document or those announcements from the teachers and that week view, guiding them into what is due when. So we know for a fact that Mr. Sonoda is going to be providing course support from 9 to 10 for critical lenses. So your student on Friday would put the goal in there. Oops, not data science, not economics, English 4. There we go. So this would be critical lenses is the power focus area we would be working on. And we would be attend course support 9 to 10 a.m. So I was able to select through a click and type my action item. If I click create goal, it's going to trigger an error. I, as the parent, can't set his goals for him. He has to do it. So this is one of those great home office hour activities on Mondays, helping identify those action items. Obviously, I did not do that with my son yet today because his week view is blank. Okay. So again, it's going to kick off an error, but at the end of your home office hours, you should have ideally at least one action item per course for the week. Some students will break it down much more clearly, and that works better for them. So if I just select critical lenses, we're going to study and take notes. He doesn't like taking Cornell notes. And we can identify whether it's on all objectives or on objective 1. So you can be as specific as is helpful for you and your student. Okay. So I can look again at that workflow document, at the calendar for the course, at the project calendar. It's all listed somewhere in Schoology. Spend some time today looking for it in those courses. The action items happen after you set the goals, then you get started. Though year view, and I do apologize that we have not squished it yet. I'm hoping in our tonight's overnight sync, you will have your semesters all squished to be ending mid-January. So it looks like they have all the time in the world, when in reality, they have half, because we award units and credits at the semester level. So from our year view, as the parent, we have our blue pacing line. I can see as we're progressing across the semester what we should have completed. At this point, this is the beginning. This is just last week was week 0. This is week 1. So if I mouse over my math class, I can see that there is 1 checkpoint and 2 final products, and it relates to 2 different focus areas. We're going to skip down and stick with English. So we know that critical lenses is being instructed on by Friday, but we want to get a jump start on that with our self-direction. So if I open that critical lenses power focus area, I can see the title of it. I can see what needs to be addressed. I can see the key terms, and I can see what the kids are most focused on, which is what score is needed to pass. In order to pass this focus area and be considered mastered, students must earn a 7 out of 10 correct. This critical lenses is part of that new semester first project. To attack that, to make a plan, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So today, my son should be taking the diagnostic. He should be opening up this introductory materials to look to see if there's any additional resources. This is more than likely just a generic note taker designed to guide the students into defining the key terms and taking some important notes on those different objectives. Then I'm going to identify that there are 2 key objectives, objective 1 and objective 2. Now, once my son takes that diagnostic, we're going to get some feedback circles. These round circles with arrows are going to tell us where he is strong and where he needs to focus. So the diagnostic is designed to activate that prior knowledge and encourage students to kind of dig in deep where their gaps are. If we assume that the diagnostic has 10 questions, it could be 5 questions related to objective 1 and 5 related to objective 2. Perhaps objective 1 in our feedback circle is going to say he has a 3 out of 5 on the diagnostic and a 2 out of 5 on the diagnostic. That means his prior knowledge is not that strong. And so we're going to want to dig in deep and be extra mindful in filling those gaps. We open the objective and it triggers the playlist. We have an overview, we have a presentation, and we have a check for understanding. Students will be using these resources in the playlist to take student-generated notes. Student-generated notes are handwritten unless they have an accommodation in place that allows typewritten or teacher-generated notes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then that does not apply to your student. When you open up the resources, it will give you the opportunity to take notes from this resource. And again, student-generated means in their own words. A click, copy, click, paste does not allow students to engage the neural pathways in the act of learning, which is why we ask for those handwritten notes. Students can take notes in a variety of different styles. In that PL 101 class, students are encouraged to explore different strategic note-taking styles and build their note-taking toolkit. But until they get to that project, they can engage in note-taking in their own preferred style. One of the fun things that happens in Summit is this check for understanding. It's a self-quiz. Students do not hand in their notes. Students do not hand in the answers to these quizzes, but they activate their learning and they self-check. How am I doing? Do I understand it? As in the process of taking the notes. Ideally, if a student gets a green feedback circle, they're going to use 1 or 2 resources to add to their notes and add to their knowledge because they want to elevate what they know in this process. A green checkpoint would be a half a page to a page of notes, just as a rule of thumb. A yellow feedback circle would indicate that they need to add more. So that would be a few more resources and at least a page of notes on that objective. Red would indicate they really need to dig in deep and they're looking at using almost all of the resources and they're looking at probably 2 pages of notes on that objective. Again, this is highly personalized based on how well your student does on that diagnostic with their prior knowledge. Now, some students will take that diagnostic over and over again, memorizing the right answers and getting a 100% on that diagnostic. That would trigger green feedback circles, which means they don't have to take quite as many notes. However, what they are doing is short sheeting themselves on that learning process because they haven't learned the content, they memorized the answers, and then they are taking fewer notes and engaging in fewer resources to learn the content. As a parent partner, I would encourage you to dissuade them from that behavior because the activity is not designed to just master the diagnostic. It's designed to learn the content. Once a student has taken notes on all of the objectives and is feeling confident, and the self-check is, can I analyze a given text through each of the critical lenses? Can I define the critical lenses and identify examples in analytical writing? Have I defined the key terms in a manner that I understand? And if the answer to all of that is yes, then they would request the content assessment. Now, this is a moderated process. The taking of the notes, the taking of the diagnostic, the engaging in the platform, the taking of the notes, that's all self-generated. That can happen from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., whatever your student learns best. We don't care. You as the parent might, but as an organization, we just want them engaged in the learning. The content assessment is moderated, which means somebody is going to need to look at that student's notes to ensure that they have completed the learning process. They will need to have taken the diagnostic, submitted some student-generated notes, and set a goal. When they're ready to take the assessment, right here in the bottom of that power focus area is the opportunity to create a goal. So you can do it on the week view, but you can also do it right here. And they're going to create the goal. When they're ready, it's to pass the content assessment. And this one, they only have to get a 7 out of 10. They create the goal. Again, I cannot do it on the student's behalf. Once that goal has been created, they get to request the assessment. Again, I cannot do that on behalf of the student. Once the request is in, then either you as the parent or the student needs to request that content assessment. On Monday or Friday, you request the proctor@Classical Academy email. If your student is on campus Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, they can request directly from their course teacher by showing the course teacher those student-generated notes. Or if they are in SDL, they can ask the proctor in SDL, which is that self-directed learning lab, the study hall component, to approve the content assessment at that point as well. Once the assessment is approved, students should immediately begin taking it. They should only request it when they're ready to take it. Now that approval will last 8 hours before it expires. That is really in place for our distance learners and those that are working out of our time zone. So as the parent partner, please be sure that you're requesting that content assessment when you are available to help proctor. I'm going to pause right here and see if there have been any questions so far on our announcements, our week, our year view, or especially the process of self-direction with power focus areas.
Hey, Nikki. So we did have a little bit of activity in the chat here, just talking about pacing with regards to setting goals. So one of the things that I had been recommending to parents was that if a student's working an hour per day per class, 5 days a week, then that should be pretty solid. And then breaking up your goals for like 1 hour chunks, give or take. If you feel like your student needs more steps, especially for our students who really do need that step-by-step, setting up more goals is never a problem, and can really help kind of show where your student's at.
So an example of that would have been focusing this week in particular on that power focus area of critical lenses. So on Monday, we're going to take the diagnostic and investigate the resources. On Tuesday, we're going to take notes on objective 1. On Wednesday, we're going to take notes on objective 2. On Thursday, we may be working on one of the checkpoints for that project, which we're going to look at just coming up next. And then on Friday, we're going to attend that 1 hour chunk of time for support with Mr. Sonoda before we attempt that power focus area. And I'm pretty sure that if I'm in the Zoom with Mr. Sonoda going over those, that Mr. Sonoda would then look at my resources, my notes, and then approve that content assessment for me as my teacher proctor. So that's kind of an example of what that would look like spread across the week. Does that add some clarity? Anything else, Mr. Sonoda, that I need to address before we move on?
Could you repeat the weekly little, what you just said, what to do each day?
Absolutely. So when I'm looking at my critical lenses workflow with my student as our Monday home office hours, I'm looking to say that Mr. Sonoda really wants this done by 9/5, which is next week. And he's going to provide support here on 9/1. So we're going to be really proactive on that one. I also am looking to see that my checkpoint 1 is due on 9/8. So I don't want to forget about that. I'm going to balance between the two. So when I'm looking at my week and setting up our goals together, for English, we would start with a diagnostic. Remember, that's the very top piece of that power focus area. And so I would encourage my son to take the diagnostic and then review those resources, not necessarily get started on his note-taking, but identify what resources are available. I would also encourage him to go back to our critical lenses resources here in Schoology and identify what's been provided. So many of our students don't understand what's available to them. So spending some time really kind of tinkering around and looking for that is very valuable time spent. So then on Tuesday, we would then start with objective 1 and take notes on objective 1. That would be how we spent our 1 hour of English time. On Wednesday, we would take notes on objective 2, again, about another hour of English class time. On Wednesday, I would encourage my son to kind of start looking at that first checkpoint, because that's going to be due the next week. And we need to have an indication in our brain of what we're going to be doing for that. Some sort of, let me think about what this is going to look like for me. Then on Friday, we would have set that goal to attend that instructional time with Mr. Sonoda, because he's giving us that direct instruction. I'll have my notes on objective 2 and objective 1 completed already. But then on Friday, I get that 1 hour of synchronous support focusing just on that power focus area. And more than likely, once I show Mr. Sonoda my notes, then he would approve that content assessment for me to do my first attempt. Now, getting it done on the 1st before it's due on the 5th is a great tool, because if I don't master it with that 7 out of 10, I have more time to add to my notes, to add to my knowledge before I make, my second attempt. And so if I don't master it on that Friday, I can still do another attempt on that Tuesday to master that content assessment. So we're being proactive in our time management. The sooner we can teach our students to be proactive rather than reactive, we really help elevate that, alleviate that anxiety for them, because they truly are kind of in charge of their effort and their calendar, which is something very different than being assigned something and it's gone over that day in class. You finish it that night, whether you understand it or not, and it's turned in the next day. You have the opportunity to kind of play with your schedule to make sure that it meets your needs. Did that help?
Perfect, thanks.
Absolutely. All right, so I really briefly talked about projects. So I have a whole parent boot camp dedicated to parenting through a project, but I want to briefly touch on that right now, because the students are balancing between those power focus areas and those projects. So we have this very first welcome project for Mr. Sonoda, and it's actually due on the 5th. Yikes, that's next Tuesday. My son should be actively engaged in working on those things. But what are those things? Well, if I just mouse over it, I'll notice that there are 5 checkpoints and 1 final product, and that's all related to that critical lenses focus area. Okay, so now I click on it. And again, I'm viewing this as my student, so I get a chance to see what's assigned. So power focus area notes completion due 8/29. Oh, dang, that's tomorrow. So maybe my plan didn't work very well when I was setting up the Tuesday and Wednesday time for notes. Maybe I need to grab them and drag them over to do them sooner rather than later. That's due on 8/29. What do? Well, I'm going to open up that power focus area. If I click on that checkpoint, I get my action box right here. And it says power focus area notes completion due 8/29. Directions, complete the notes. Okay, so what do I click on? The title in our action box is the link. We open that up, and it actually gives us the assignment that we use to turn in our work. So complete notes, paste screenshots or images of your notes below. Once they're done, we click on request feedback to turn them in. So ideally, your student is using their spiral bound notebook, taking handwritten notes. They can use their phone or they can use the Chromebook camera and then turn in those screenshots or turn in those images by requesting feedback. That's due Tuesday. Typically, most of us have what we call Cinderella assignments, which means they're due at midnight. You're welcome to tune them in sooner. We do not expect students working that late, but we don't have, recognizing our students have very busy schedules and they're balancing that self-direction, we don't consider anything late until the next day. The plagiarism acknowledgement due. Let's click on that. Oh, we've got a resource. We have the student handbook as a resource, as well as a link here. So again, the title is the link. We can open that up and we can view the definition of plagiarism. That's a web link, as well as the student handbook. To turn in the assignment, we open up, again, the activity box is right here in the big column on the right. And then the student's initials go here, recognizing and acknowledging for Mr. Sonoda. What's due on the 30th is we're going to log in and explore Actively Learn. We have our work samples due in Schoology. Review the updates, syllabus, and workflow documentation. And again, we click on that assignment, that checkpoint. It brings up the syllabus, the action item. Oh, there's a read more. I love that. Many of our students forget the read more. So again, when it says read more, encourage them to click on it. We have extra information about the assignment. We open up the assignment and they have to complete this activity. When it's complete, again, the blue request feedback is how they turn it in. As the parent, I cannot do this. It must be done from the student's account. And then how do I know what's going to be graded? Well, down here, the starred item is what actually gets graded. So checkpoints 1 through 5 receive feedback, which means if the student does well, they get green, which means they're on pace, on track, ready to move on. If they get yellow, it means they weren't quite there, either not quite at grade level, they missed an objective, they missed a part of the assignment, or they didn't quite understand the concept. And with a yellow checkpoint, the student will receive feedback in the form of a guiding comment. They will know what they need to fix with the comment from the teacher. If it's red, it means it didn't get submitted, or they submitted it very incomplete. If it's gray, it means it was late, not submitted. Please pay attention and work on me now. If we want to see what's being graded, we click on that star. Again, read more. This explains the assignment. And if we click on it, there's nothing to submit, because if we read the assignment, the students receive credit for completing the checkpoints. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about this project or projects in general? This is where those home office hours with you are incredibly important, helping them navigate and balance between the independence that comes in self-direction with those power focus areas and the guided assignments that are a part of the project work. Mr. Sonoda, any other questions?
So far, so good. We've had some questions about how some of this looks separately for different classes, but I think we've been able to hash it out. We're having some issues getting into the parent group, but I think we're sorting that out too.
Fantastic. All right. Then at this point, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording and allow direct questions where you are not captured on the video.